Hi, it is Monday, July the 10th, and this is what's happening in the condo market this week. Thanks for checking out this video. We'll jump right in. Today we have a new format. Hope you enjoy. First article is from the Globe and Mail, and Urbanation has come out with their stats for the second quarter of this year for the rental numbers. The headline from the Globe is Toronto condo rental market soars on heels of new measures. And so they're talking about the numbers that come out from Urbanation, second quarter. Rental rates are up 11%. So this is great news once again for condo investors. Rental rates just keep rising and rising and rising. And as we've talked a lot about on this show and on this video and on the podcast over the past few months, all these measures that the government has been putting into place for the most part are strongly in favor of the condo investor. We're going to continue to see higher rents. The great quote from Hildebrand, who's been on the show many times. The message here is that we're grossly underbuilding rentals, and the rent control measures that were introduced are going to make it worse over time through less supply and less turnover. So people are staying in their units longer. They don't want to move because rental rates are so high. If you have a decent rental rate, you don't want to move. And the people that are looking to rent for the first time are finding that the rental rates that they're encountering out there are 11% higher than the same time last year. So we've been in double-digit rental increases now for several months, almost a year. It's amazing news. Again, if you're a condo investor, if you own condos, you're renting them out. It's, of course, a tough time if you are a condo renter. But the reality is that this is likely going to continue. We're going to see this moving into the future. This is not a normal thing, as we talk about a lot of what's normal and what isn't normal. This is not a normal thing, but the reality is this is likely going to continue for a long time, potentially, these big rental rate increases because there's just no supply. So yes, prices of condos have risen up dramatically over the last year, but rents are rising too. And so again, if you are sitting on the fence and you're thinking, how can I buy this condo and get positive cash flow? The numbers just don't work. Well, if rents are rising at double-digit rates, which they have been, if that continues, then that is a major factor that you need to understand and look at and analyze as you're projecting your rents out 3, 4, 5 years down the road. The reality is the rental rates are going to shock people what they're going to be for condos that are purchased today that are completed in 3, 4, 5 years. It's going to shock people who are sleeping on these stats, who are not paying attention to what's happening in the market, and who don't understand what's driving all this. And of course, it's the lack of supply. So that is the first article there. We're jumping into the next one quickly here, which is stats. We have some real numbers on foreign buyers. So we finally, after years of speculating what percentage of the market is foreign buyers, people throwing out crazy numbers all over the place, we finally have some real numbers because the government mandated that we now start tracking this. The lawyers have to track specifically the foreign buyer or not on closings of properties in Ontario here. So 4.7%. Foreign buyers make up 4.7% of home sales in Ontario's Golden Horseshoe area. So these were for closings between April 24th and May 26th. So only 1 month, a very small period of time. Again, we're not going to make huge conclusions on this other than to say the number is very small. It's definitely low single digits, as has been predicted on this podcast and on these videos for years by myself and many other experts who work in the industry. Low single digits has always been the number. And what's interesting is most of these closings would have been purchases and contracts made before the foreign buyer tax was introduced. So I do expect that when the next set of numbers come out, that it's probably going to be lower than 4.7% because the foreign buyer tax came in, and probably a lot of those foreign buyers decided not to buy or will decide not to buy moving forward. So the number is very small. The people who are telling you that foreign buyers are ruining the market and they're a huge factor in the market, it's just simply not true. We now have empirical evidence to support that. If this number came out and it was, 12, 18%, something like that, then, we'd really have interesting conversation here. But this is pretty much exactly where myself and many other experts who are in the industry working with buyers and sellers every day predicted it would be. So it will be interesting to see what happens now when we get the next set of data when the foreign buyer taxes has taken place. On that note as well, we've got some numbers from Vancouver, our friends in Vancouver, and their headline reads 2.8% of metro homes bought by foreign buyers since the tax launch. So they've got numbers which are even lower. And again, their numbers are from after their foreign buyer tax was introduced until today. And the number is only 2.8%. Again, a very small number. What was it before their foreign buyer tax came in? Who knows? Just speculation. We can't say. But we see that number, and we know that number is very, very low. So it's a good thing. It's healthy for our market. It's once again driving home this point that we've talked about so many times, that foreign buyers are not the boogeyman that's ruining everything for us, as some in the media and headlines and talking heads out there would have you believe. It's just simply not true. We have evidence now to show that. Next, we have a great article from The Economist. Definitely check this article out. Economist always has an interesting perspective on things. It's called Maple Grief, the lessons from Canada's attempts to curb its house price boom. So they're talking about basically how China has developed this emerging economy, and people in China have money that they've never had before. So they've got money to invest, and they don't want to invest it in China. They're looking for emerging markets like China, and others are looking for safe places around the world to put their money. And Canada, in Toronto and Vancouver in particular, is one of those hot places where they want to put that money. Safe assets is the key word here. The demand from emerging markets for safe assets will not soon diminish, is sort of the key conclusion of the article. So if you're hoping that suddenly Canada will go away and foreign money, even though it is a small part of our market, that is suddenly going to go somewhere else, it's probably not going to happen. Canada, as long as Canada continues to be a great place, which it is, and the real estate market here continues to grow, then there's going to be demand always from emerging markets to put their money here. So it's one of the challenges. Basically, they're talking about the challenge of emerging markets and this money that's looking, global capital that's looking for safe places to go. And it's looking outward to countries like Canada and cities like Toronto. Interesting article. Check that out. Next up, we have out of, I believe this one is out of Seattle, and it's a very in-depth article about the foreign buyer dilemma in Vancouver, and it's relating it to Seattle. So the headline is "Stop Blaming Foreign Home Buyers, Untangling the Role of Foreign Investment in Vancouver and Seattle Housing Markets." So basic conclusions of the article is, yes, foreign buyers are a thing. Yes, foreign buyers do influence the market to some degree. But he's saying the real culprit here, the real problem with Vancouver and potentially Seattle as well, is the lack of supply. We do not have enough housing to meet demand. So that is why prices are going to continue to rise. He goes into debates back and forth whether there is a bubble or not a bubble. Just some great analysis and very in-depth article here you definitely want to check out to look at how Vancouver and perhaps Seattle could be the next sort of target of foreign capital. What to do about it, what's causing it, and again, ultimately, the issue here is he's underlying is supply. We need more supply. So interesting article there from an outsider perspective, not somebody from Toronto, not somebody from this industry. Always good to see different perspectives like that. Moving on to the New York Times, and there's a opinion article here: Canada's ruthlessly smart immigration policy. So comparing Canada's immigrants and the United States immigrants, and basically, how getting into the politics of Trump and everything else, the anti-immigration stance. Basically, Trump is looking to revamp their immigration process there, and the inspiration, it says, is Canada and Canada's immigration policy. Basically, again, this speaks to the fact of immigrants driving growth in Canada, immigrants driving population growth, but also economic growth, and especially in the GTA, where there's approximately 100,000 new immigrants from within and without Canada coming to the GTA every year. The immigrants of today are not like the immigrants of yesterday. So the stories of our parents, my father, and probably many of you listening who are immigrants or who are children of immigrants, coming to Canada with $1 in their pocket or a suitcase and nothing else, kind of a thing. Those days are times are different now. Those days the immigrants of today are nothing like that. The immigrants coming to Canada, it's basically going into detail about how they're very high quality, they're very well educated. A lot of them have a lot of money and assets behind them as well. And so they're coming into Canada, they're coming into the GTA, and they're the economic driver. They're driving this engine of the GTA economy and the GDP in this region. And so that is, again, another reason why we have done so well economically, why through the recession of 2008, why we stood strong while the rest of the world was collapsing all around us, why we've continued to grow. It's this growth that we're experiencing in this amazing crop of immigrants that we are attracting and that we intentionally are attracting. And it's interesting to see that Trump is sort of looking to take a page out of Canada's book and get some of those high-quality immigrants sort of to the U.S. And finally, we want to end on this note from the CBC. $4.8 billion in transit funding is on the way. So very good news. The relief line is coming soon, hopefully. We do have some more good news about funding coming in for the relief line. And anybody looking to invest on the east side of downtown, on the east side of the city, it's a great time to do that now because the relief line is looking closer and closer to a reality. So always want to stay on top of the infrastructure trends like that as investors, particularly around transit. Okay, there you go. That's the video for this week. I hope you enjoyed this episode in this new format. If you want to go ahead and hit the like button, hit the share button, tag somebody you know who should watch this video, or email this to share it with somebody that you know. That would be much appreciated. Until next time, have a great week.